Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be sharing 10 spring fragrances, and actually in the UK spring isn't plain sailing. There are days in March when it snows. In fact, there was one just yesterday. And so I'm going to choose some fragrances that are somewhat sort of wintry in feeling but have those kind of spring feelings to them as well for some of the earlier ones. And then I'm going to move more into the sort of the more late spring and summer appropriate fragrances. So if you like this kind of content, then please do consider subscribing if you haven't done already, and also please like this video if you do end up enjoying this video. So let's get on with my first choice. So my first choice is actually one that I would wear on a night out, perhaps in early spring. I think, you know, a snowy night out in early spring like it was last night would be absolutely perfect for this fragrance. So this one is Tom Ford's Velvet Orchid. This is a fragrance that I've been wanting for ages and I finally picked it up, and I think this one is just far more appropriate for spring than Black Orchid. I really love Black Orchid, but I just don't think it quite fits with spring. Whereas this one, it just has that sort of floral fanfare that you get at the beginning of spring with all those bold flowers. This one has that. And I also think that this one is just a friendlier fragrance than Black Orchid. It doesn't have that deep earthiness that Black Orchid has that puts a lot of people off and that is so polarising. This one's a lot more gentle, and it's also got rum and it's got more honey, I think, than Black Orchid does. It's just a generally more approachable fragrance, and actually I've only worn this a few times and I've already had a compliment on it, so I think people do really like this one, and it's a strong one. It's one that people can smell on you, lasts ages, and yeah, Tom Ford's Velvet Orchid is my first pick. So the second fragrance is kind of in the same category as Velvet Orchid, perhaps it's a little bit more daytime appropriate, but I did wear it on my night out last night, and this one is Burning Cherry by Kayali. So this fragrance is all about that sort of woody, almost smoky cherry, really. That's really the main thing in this fragrance. Burning Cherry really describes this fragrance very, very well. Really, this fragrance only really changes from the offset. So the first 15 seconds will be like a cherry bakewell, and then it will just completely transform into this smoky, woody cherry. And you're pretty much left with that through most of the fragrance. I wouldn't say this one is super strong, but it's something you get wafts of. It is actually really long lasting. I do smell this still 8-9 hours after I've applied it. I'm really quite impressed with the longevity of this fragrance. But also in the dry down, the thing that I really love about it is there's a really beautiful musky feeling to it. And yeah, you just smell delicious. I got told that I was smelling delicious yesterday, so, you know, okay, it's my husband, but maybe it's true. So that's Burning Cherry by Kayali. So the next fragrance is actually one I was completely obsessed with last year, and I wore a lot around this time. And this one is Reminiscence Les Notes Gourmandes Héliotrope. So this fragrance really evokes that Easter season for me. It does start out a little bit green with a bit of a fig note, but actually that goes quite quickly. And you're left with something that's almost like a little bit of a lightly spiced vanilla sponge or some kind of cake like that, topped with a layer of marzipan. The marzipan is really the thing that you end up smelling in the end of the fragrance. But this is just creamy. It's also a little bit powdery. It's just got that sort of really gourmand feel about it, and it's just a delicious fragrance. You just smell edible if you wear this one, and yeah, it's really long lasting, it's really strong, it projects, and yeah, I can't fault this fragrance. It's just something that I really enjoy wearing, and I'm not really a huge fan of gourmand fragrances. I'm pretty picky with gourmand fragrances, but I really, really do enjoy this one. So that's Les Notes Gourmandes Héliotrope. So this next fragrance is one from Miller Harris, and it's called Violet Ida. So don't be fooled by the name, there's no violet in this fragrance, but actually this fragrance starts off with loads of carrot seed. So the carrot seed is quite vegetal, it's almost a little bit dry, earthy feeling in the beginning of this fragrance as well. But actually that fades back and you're left with quite an irisy, lipsticky, makeup-y kind of smell with a load of vanilla. It's something that really wraps you up in a very enveloping scent bubble. It's something that really feels quite thick and quite heavy, but not too much. It's like just enough to feel like people can smell you, and it's a very long lasting fragrance, but it's not annoying. It's something that I just feel in a mood for sometimes. It's got a very vintage feel to it. It makes me think of vintage handbags. It makes me think of like makeup dropped on the linings of vintage handbags, like powders and yeah, that really old school lipsticky smell as well. So that's my fourth choice, Violet Ida by Miller Harris. So this next fragrance is actually a flanker of Decadence by Marc Jacobs, and this one is oh so decadent. So I think actually, ultimately, I prefer this flanker to the original Pillar fragrance. I just think this one's more wearable year round, and yeah, it's just got something about it that I really like. So I absolutely hate the other flanker, by the way, Divine Decadence. I just can't stand that fragrance. It makes me feel a bit sick. This one though, I really love. So Oh So Decadent is a very sort of ozonic feeling, green, almost aquatic feeling kind of fragrance. It's definitely got a wateriness to it. And it opens with a green smelling blackcurrant, but there's also a little bit of pear. The pear is actually pretty good in this fragrance. Sometimes pear can just smell incredibly artificial and just horrible. In this fragrance, it smells like an icy pear. And actually, I think that's contributed to by quite a heavy dose of ambroxan in this fragrance. Ambroxan is something, to me, that can smell either really wrong in fragrance or it can smell really like it's contributing. Here, for me, it's contributing. It's very crystal clear and it just adds a lot of depth to this fragrance. This fragrance also does have florals in it, so it most prominently has magnolia in it, and I think that's really why it makes me think of spring. It has those green notes like ivy, but also that magnolia. And actually by my gate on my wall there's some ivy, and there's also a magnolia bush. So I get those smells every time I open my gate. And so that's why I think this fragrance makes me think so much of spring. So that's Oh So Decadent by Marc Jacobs. So this next fragrance is also a watery fragrance, but if the last fragrance was more of an icy, watery fragrance, this one is more of a fresh, watery fragrance. It's more like a spring garden that's been rained on. And this one actually makes me think of Japanese gardens, actually. This one is Le Jardin de Monsieur by Hermès. So this fragrance, if you look at the listed notes, that's basically what I smell. I think the listed notes really do describe how this smells really very well. And actually, I had no clue what a kumquat would smell like. And when I smelled this fragrance, I kind of worked it out from trying to eliminate the other notes. But to me, it smells a little bit like a very soft lemon, a very, very gentle lemon. It's definitely a citrus. And it also makes me think of Chinese gooseberries, but not as sharp as a Chinese gooseberry. That kind of smell almost. It also has a little bit of a woody feel or a resinous feel, a little bit of a greenness to it, almost like a pine forest or something like that. It's a very, very odd fragrance, this one, and it's something that I don't really have anything else like. And when I first bought it, I was quite shocked by how it smelled. It didn't smell how I was imagining at all. It's definitely more of a citrusy floral fragrance as well as all of that wateriness. But really, it's just, yeah, it's something I've not smelt before. And I just think that this would be really good for transitioning from spring to summer, actually. I think this one would work really well in the summer if it does last. I don't know how long this fragrance would last in hot weather. But at the moment, I'm getting about 4 or 5 hours out of this fragrance, quite close to skin. But I definitely get wafts of this fragrance for 4 or 5 hours. So that's Le Jardin de Monsieur by Hermès. So this next fragrance is one from Lalique, and it's called Perles de Lalique. So this fragrance is a very good transitional one. I'd say this is good for really cold days, and it's good for those warmer spring days as well, because it has cold and warm facets to it. It almost smells like a fizzy rose water to me. A fizzy, yeah, a rose flavoured fizzy drink almost. I think maybe it's the pepper in this fragrance that's making me think that it's fizzy. So yeah, if you look at the notes, you think, oh, I've smelt this before. It's a peppery rose patchouli fragrance. But actually, this is really distinctively different because of that fizziness to it. And I think that's really what makes it refreshing and what makes it a good one for that transitional period and for spring, summer. It's really long lasting and it does project really well, actually. It's something that you definitely can smell in wafts throughout the day. You definitely smell it on yourself. And yeah, it's just a really nice fragrance. I think it's compared to Midnight Poison. Personally, I don't really get the comparison. They share some notes, but I wouldn't say that this is as unfriendly as Midnight Poison can be. I think Midnight Poison can be quite threatening to some people. This is definitely an easier to like fragrance. This is a sweeter fragrance. So that's Perles de Lalique by Lalique. So this next fragrance is also a transitional one, but I think if the last fragrance was more of the transition between winter and spring, this is more of the transition between spring and summer. So this one is Cerruti 1881, which is a floral fragrance with a slightly aquatic feel to begin with, but really the aquaticness goes quite quickly. Ultimately, this is a chamomile fragrance in the main. The chamomile smells like a chamomile tea almost. It's got that kind of greenness and that sort of I don't know, almost fuzzy floralness you get with chamomile. It's sort of almost like a yellowy water kind of feel to the fragrance. Something where you can almost smell like the pollen of the flower. Also in this fragrance, you also get some powdery mimosa later on. So I think those two are the most prominent notes in the fragrance really, but there is also some rose, I think, sort of a fresh pinker rose. And actually in the dry down, it becomes quite musky. So the musk here is something that I wouldn't describe as entirely clean, but it's not dirty either. It's something in between. It's one of those that sort of makes you keep sniffing because you don't really understand it. And yeah, I think this fragrance really, for the price it is an absolute steal. And I've talked to so many people and heard that so many people love this one. And loads of people feel very nostalgic about this fragrance as well. It's really long lasting and it does project as well. It's really quite a strong one for the type of fragrance this is. It's quite a good projector. So that's Cerruti 1881. So the last two fragrances are more things you would wear when you know that spring is nearly over, when you know that summer is really around the corner, when it's really quite warm. And the first one is Narciso Rodriguez Narciso Ambrée. So this fragrance I bought because my Poudrée flanker is running out and I didn't want to be without one from this line because I really like this DNA. So this fragrance does have that same DNA of this line that they all share. So they all have this white floral feel, they all have this muskiness, and they all have a little bit of a certain powderiness to them. But really this one also has those tropical florals and that gives it a really solar feel to it. And actually this one makes me think of those days when you are breaking out a summer dress, where you think this is it, this is summer, and then the next day it's raining. It's one of those kind of, you know, grab it while it's there kind of fragrances. And I think this is something that would really go very well with that sort of happy sunny feeling that you get on just some random spring day that's freakishly warm. So that's Narciso Rodriguez, Narciso Ambrée. So I think this final fragrance is definitely one that would suit the late spring and early summer, and it's called Salvatore Ferragamo Signorina Ribelle. So this fragrance, I think everybody got super excited when it first came out because it has gelato note listed. Honestly, I don't really smell something that would remind me of gelato. There's something sugary sweet in it, but I wouldn't say it's gelato. This fragrance is mainly an ylang-ylang fragrance and that sugary sweetness. And actually the ylang-ylang and the sugary sweetness kind of tone each other down and it's quite a nice balance. I think even if you hate ylang-ylang, it's not one of those really stinky ylang-ylangs that is really, really strong and prominent. It's more of a gentle ylang-ylang. And I'd say this one does have a slight solar feel, but it's definitely less than the Narciso Ambrée fragrance. This one is more about the musk. This one is just quite universal, I think. I can't really see anybody hating this fragrance. It's something that I think would be quite crowd pleasing. It's something that's quite versatile. I can see me going through this little bottle quite quickly actually. I think it's something that I'll be reaching for a lot in the spring. And it's something as well that lasts quite a long time on my skin, but it doesn't really project. It's quite a quiet one. I think it'd be good for work. So that's Signorina Ribelle by Salvatore Ferragamo. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, then please press the like button and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know, what will you be wearing this springtime? And also, have you tried any of the fragrances in this video and what do you think of them? So thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.